Welcome to Interviewing People, where we will talk to a variety of people with a focus on how they ended up where they are today, what they learned from their mistakes, and what advice they have for our futures. Enjoy the show. All right, and tonight we have Brittany Ramsey Busse with us, and she works for the Chicago Sky of the WNBA. So she's going to be giving us some insights about how she ended up in this career and how she went from Van Buren, Ohio to the big city of Chicago for her career. So Brittany, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And I guess maybe if not for students, but for me, I'd love to hear a little bit about what happened after high school to get you to this point, and just any details you can give us about that.
Yeah, of course. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm super happy to be here. I love being able to chat with the students. So a little bit about my story. So after I graduated from Van Buren, I actually went to Purdue University my freshman year in West Lafayette, Indiana, and I walked onto the basketball team there and was going to school. But being a walk-on, I wasn't getting any money to play, so finances caught up with me pretty quickly. And there was actually a Division II school called Tarleton State University outside of Dallas, Texas, that was interested in having me come down there to play basketball, and they were going to pay me scholarship money to do it. So after my freshman year at Purdue, I actually transferred down to that school in Texas and finished school, played basketball down there. And once I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I knew I wanted to get my master's. I wanted to go straight into it. That was about 2010, and that's when the recession was going on. So it was kind of hard to get a job at that time anyways. So I knew that jumping into my master's would probably be a good move for me. So that's actually what took me to Chicago, was getting my master's. So I got it at a private university here called Roosevelt University in Integrated Marketing Communications, and moved here for grad school. While I was in grad school, I got a couple really good internships, and those internships, the last one actually ended up becoming a job for a sports marketing agency downtown Chicago. So once I got that internship and I graduated, they snatched me up full time, and I was there. And then I was there for about 8 years, so I was there for a little while. And then last year, I actually moved over to the league side and decided to work for the WNBA.
Okay, very cool. So what do you specifically do now in your job with the Sky?
Sure. So I'm an account executive. I basically, in layman's terms, my job is to get butts in seats. Like, I'm trying to get people to come to the games, to experience the WNBA, to experience the Chicago Sky. That could be season ticket holders. I have good relationships with a lot of them. That could be just people that are just visiting Chicago. That could be people that don't know a lot about the W, and we want to get them out to a game. Could be really passionate fans. It could be businesses and partnerships. It's a whole variety of different potential options.
Okay. So how was your season this year affected by COVID and all of that?
Yeah, it was an interesting year to have my first season with the Sky, but also a really good year, because if we can make it through this, we can make it through anything, so it's kind of the way I feel about it. But it was very impacted. I mean, we normally play downtown at Wintrust Arena, and everything was canceled in Chicago. But just like the NBA, the WNBA had a bubble down in Florida that they played in. So we were down there from July to September.
Okay.
Yep. We made the playoffs.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I saw that they made the playoffs and so forth. So, okay. So as you think back to your time at Van Buren, are there any skills or anything that you feel like you learned in high school that has turned out to be significant for you in your career and so forth?
I personally feel as though that Van Buren does a really good job of giving you the skeleton of what you need to step out into the real world. I mean, obviously you're learning as you go, right? Like, experiences along the way teach you a lot, but Van Buren made me feel confident in stepping out into I went to a huge school at Purdue, and I didn't know anybody there, and moving down south to a new area of the United States and experiencing kind of a different culture down there. Everything was new to me, and I felt like coming from somewhere like Van Buren was actually really good because of the fact that it being from a small town kind of makes you more genuine, I think. And I think that has played to my favor in so many different facets of my career because of the fact that I don't come across, I think, as trying too hard. I'm just myself, right? And I feel like Van Buren teaches you hard work. They teach you, they kind of give you that structure of if you really want to succeed, this is how you can potentially do it. And I think if you follow that, it pays off.
Is that ever anything that came up when you were applying for jobs, like your first job with the sports marketing firm or even with the Sky? Do they ever talk about, where did you come from? Or is it more just focused on what skills do you have that are going to bring value to our company?
Both. Every job I've had, they wanted to know more about where I come from. And they always, especially at the beginning, because you don't have a lot of experience on your resume. Most of it's just education and where you're from. So they always want to know, like, where's Van Buren and what part of Ohio? Because they don't know, they've never heard of those places. So, and then they find out I'm kind of from a smaller place and I took the leap to do something different. And it turns into a really easy way to relate to people and to connect to people.
Okay, good. That's interesting. So one of the big topics we've been talking about recently is branding. And I've been trying to emphasize to students that, we are in control of our own brands and we need to make sure that we are showing people what we can do, what we're interested in, so forth. Obviously as someone looking for a job, you've had a resume and so forth. Have you done anything beyond a resume when it comes to branding and showing people what you can do and trying to make yourself more attractive to those employers?
I think that the generation nowadays, there's such an opportunity to do that. I feel like I came at a time when social media, when I was really starting out, that it was just kind of starting to hit its peak at that point. Now it's an entire platform. And I do believe that it should be used. I did help a lot with the hiring at Revolution, which was the sports marketing agency I was at. And I've noticed a lot of people do that. And I think it works to their favor if you have multiple places where people can kind of see more about who you are and what you represent. I haven't used specific platforms as much as I have. I guess specifically I haven't, but I do think that everything that I do plays a part of my branding. I always take it very serious, whatever I post, whether that's on a personal platform of Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, or like a more professional platform like LinkedIn. Everything's very, I wouldn't care if an employer saw it because I take pride in how I'm presenting myself.
Right.
And I think that's really important. Like, even if you're not doing it specifically for a job, how you portray yourself should always be something that you're willing to let your employer see.
So any stories from anything that you ever, when you were with the sports marketing firm, anything that you saw that someone had posted that made you step back from being interested in that person as an employee, anything that jumps out from that? And if not, that's okay.
When I was really helping with that, I didn't see anything specifically that made me step back, but I will say that I had a couple people that I knew in the HR department say during, when they were looking for interns, that they did see a few people that kind of had a lot of, I don't want to say this like it's a bad thing, but kind of like partying pictures, I guess you could say, and things like that out there. And I don't want people to think they can't have fun and talk about that. And, but I do think that you have to be a little cognizant of the things that you're putting out there because it's always out there. Like it's never going to disappear once you post it.
Right. So, one of the students I thought asked an interesting question. I think most of us, we would say, wow, someone working for a professional sports team, that'd be so cool. Living in a big city, that'd be cool, so forth. But someone asked, is there anything you regret not doing in the time that you were working for the Sky and so forth? Or do you feel like you didn't have to give anything up to go after what a lot of people would call a dream job?
Sure. I think that's a really good question. It's a deep question, and I love deep questions, so I appreciate that question. But I would say no, but that's because my journey, and I kind of didn't go into this when I first said it, but when I left Revolution, I actually didn't have a job lined up. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend that to people, but I knew when I left there that I just kind of wanted to take a personal sabbatical. I had gone from my bachelor's degree straight to my master's degree, straight to working full time for 8 years. I never really had time to just kind of enjoy the fruits of my labor kind of. And so I wanted to take a few months to be able to just do that and really figure out, is this really what I want to do forever? Or is there another niche within this field that I think might be a better fit for me? And I think all of us are on a journey where we're trying to figure that out. I don't think anybody ever has that figured out completely.
Right.
And so I took that time. My plan was to take about 3 to 4 months. After like a month, I was like ready to kind of start working again. It's funny how that happens. But and then I was kind of looking at different jobs and what avenues I'd want to go. And my husband actually mentioned it. He's like, I think he'd be really great for the WNBA. And I was like, well, that would be awesome. But I mean, those jobs just don't pop up, and literally like the next week it popped up on my phone that there was an opening with Chicago, and I applied and went through a ton of interviews and got the job. So I would say that I would have said yes to that question had I not taken that personal sabbatical. But I did take that personal time. I think mental health is super important. I think paying attention to not overworking yourself and making sure that you're taking the time to enjoy life too is important as well.
Right. But yeah, that's really interesting to hear you talk about some of that, because I've got a lot of students right now that I think are putting a ton of pressure on themselves that I need to figure out exactly what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I'm trying to reinforce to them that, hey, this is a process. And I think it's good for them to hear your experience of, you had that job with the sports marketing and just needed something else. And then you were able to go find that. So yeah, definitely, I think good for them to hear that.
Sure. And I do think too, there is a lot of pressure when you go to college to feel like I need to know what major I'm going to do and what I'm going to spend my time on. And I actually, when I went to Purdue, it was actually your yearbook class. I took yearbook with you, Mr. Brott.
Okay.
And I remember I really liked it. And my mom was like, you might be interested in like marketing or PR or something. And I was like, oh, maybe. So I just did that because I didn't know what else to do as my major. And I took a class at Purdue that they actually introduced you to all the different majors out there. So you could see if there's something else I'd rather be doing. So I ended up sticking with what I had because it just fit me the best. But I will say in that class, I did learn that they said 70% of college freshmen actually changed their major. So a lot of people don't know exactly what they want to do, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Right, right. So you talked a little bit about finding that opening for the Chicago Sky job. And one thing that we're talking about, again, we're going to be talking about more is networking, making connections with people, how those relationships can really help. Did relationships have anything to do with you finding this job, getting this job? I guess what role in this situation, and then maybe just in general in your career, have relationships and connections played?
It's an interesting thought because there wasn't a specific person that I knew at the Sky that I connected with that helped me get the job. It wasn't that type of structured response, I guess, but I think relationships are the number one thing that have gotten me anywhere because of the fact that I have such a close relationship with the people at Revolution. I'm in the sports marketing firm. I still do. I mean, I talk to the CEO once a month just to catch up with them. And I think it's really important to never burn a bridge, to always have a really good relationship with people when you can. Because I know if I ever needed something, I could go back to them and talk to them about it. Ask them for advice, use them as a reference if I ever needed to, which I did for this job. So the Chicago Sky could call Revolution and be like, is Brittany actually a good person to have here? And they're going to say yes because of the fact that we have such a great relationship. So I think although it wasn't the main thing that helped me get the job, I do think relationships were the foundation that will always help you ladder up no matter what you're doing.
Right. So in that position, well, even your first position with the sports marketing firm or with the Sky, is there a lot of competition for jobs out there when you were looking for these and going after these? I guess what was that like to have competition, and are there still, I don't know, is there still competition that you have to be concerned with even today with the job? And I don't know, I might make myself clear on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that the workplace is a competitive place for sure. And I think that your managers, I have found, kind of push that a lot. Like they know that it's a competitive market. I mean, the sports field is just very sought after in a lot of ways, no matter what you're doing within it. And it's $1 billion platform. So I think a lot of people like just really are drawn to the glory of it, but they also sometimes don't understand the work that goes into the back end of a lot of things. But yeah, it's definitely competitive. I personally like that. I mean, I've been a competitor and an athlete my whole life, so that's never, I guess I've never shied away from that. But when you're interviewing with these people and getting to know them and having relationships with them, you have no idea who else they're interviewing. So, I mean, you know that if they call you back, okay, I'm down to probably the top 5 people, probably the top 3 people now, so you know that you're getting closer, but you have no idea who else they're talking to. So at the end of the day, the only person you can control is yourself. And I mean, I guess my advice would just be do that to the best of your ability.
Right. So kind of like you said, you feel like coming from Van Buren, maybe it's easier for you to be genuine, and that I'm sure that does come through and definitely help and so forth. We had a question from a student asking, has anything been hard for you as a woman in this sports marketplace that, has that ever come up? Has that ever caused issues for you? Have you ever felt like you've been treated differently? I guess, what have your experiences been with that?
So it's definitely, I wouldn't say a problem, but it's definitely like something that you notice. I'm definitely one of the minority for sure. I mean, even on my team now at the Sky, there's 9 of us on my team specifically, and I'm the only female. And we're working for a women's basketball organization. Right. And I'm the only female in the front office part of it. I mean, on my team specifically. But that's never been a bad thing, I guess. Like, I've never felt like it's worked against me, because I believe that if you're smart and you're confident, and you've done the research and you bring something to the table, I've never had a male tell me that they won't listen or something, or I've never felt degraded because I'm a female, but I've definitely felt the fact that I'm one of the only females sometimes.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I guess I assumed with WNBA team, there might be more women involved in that leadership. And okay. If you were going to give advice to someone who might want to come from Van Buren and head to a big city, work for a professional sports team, etc., I guess anything that you feel like you've learned that you would want to pass on to someone looking to do something like that?
I don't know if it's something I've learned, but like we've said, being genuine and being sincere about wanting to get to know people is really important. So when I was getting into everything in the internships and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I was doing like informational interviews. So just people that I was interested in. LinkedIn is an amazing platform for this. If I saw somebody that had a job and I'm like, oh, that would be a cool job, I would just shoot them a message and be like, hey, would you be willing to talk to me for 10 minutes just to learn more about what you do? People like to talk about their story, so I got a lot of yeses. And I think just hearing other people's stories and connecting and networking, even if it never ended up in a job, it always ended up in some form of knowledge that I didn't have prior. And I think that is really important. Just get to know as many people as possible. And I have had people that I was networking with this guy that worked for Madison Square Garden in New York City, just a random informational interview. And then a year later, when I was at Revolution, he ended up being my contact when I was running a sponsorship with Madison Square Garden. So we ended up working together. So it was kind of a weird thing, but we had already been introduced. So it was a cool full circle moment, but it shows you kind of how small the sports world is once you're in it.
Right.
There's a lot of people that you'll come in contact with.
Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, we've really been working on that. Unfortunately, LinkedIn, you have to be 16 to get on there, which I learned about 2 weeks ago because I assumed we'd be able to get on there. So we're looking for some ways around that, but hopefully as they get a little older, we'll get them on there and hopefully start building those connections and so forth. So living in Chicago, just kind of a non-career question. What do you love most about that?
About the city?
Yeah, just living. I mean, do you live right downtown or?
So I lived downtown for about 6 years, like right downtown in the heart of it all. When my husband and I, when we got together, we moved kind of near Wrigley Field. So we're still in the city, but like a little north of like the really crazy downtown.
Right.
We just kind of wanted to get out of the hustle and bustle a little bit after being down there for so long. But I love the hustle and bustle though. I mean, there was something I told my mom. I was like, I want to hear cabs honking and like sirens going off just like when I go to sleep at night. Like I wanted like that feeling of like thriving and excitement, and I wanted that.
Right.
So I love that part of Chicago. I love the pizza here. It's like the best. I love it. The Chicago style hot dogs, the sports teams. I mean, there's so many professional sporting events here. When COVID's not going on and things are kind of normal here, there's just always something to do.
Yeah.
And so we've always really enjoyed that. Like Home Alone was filmed here. So this past weekend, my husband and I just went up to see the Home Alone house. So there's just always like random things to do like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's very cool. Well, Brittany, I think I've exhausted most of our questions that we had. Very, very interesting. Really appreciate everything you have to tell us. Definitely an experience that I've never had. And, most of my students, we haven't talked to someone or known a lot of people who live in the big city, work for a professional sports team and so forth. So I personally think that's really awesome because I would have loved to have done something like that, or who knows, maybe someday I will do that.
If you get to Chicago, let me know and I'll definitely get you out to a game for sure.
Yeah, that would be cool. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And if you ever, if you ever need anything from us at Van Buren, definitely let us know because we
will. And last thing too, I just want to say this. Everything I feel like good about who I am was kind of formed in Van Buren. So sometimes I know it feels very like redundant going to school and doing everything like that, but it is such a special time. Enjoy it, soak in every moment, and know that it really will be something that you build on in the future. So just soak in everything that you can while you're there.
All right. And with that,
awesome.
Thank you very much, Brittany.